A exam masterclass with Planet Geography. Today we're looking at describe questions with a resource. So what are the key thoughts on these types of questions? It's points-based marking. So each correct statement you make, you will get a mark. This means that you should probably write in bullet points. Yep, it clearly signposts to the examiner first point, second point, third point. And if you are nice to them, they will be nice to you. And then they are formulaic questions, meaning if you follow the formula, you'll do well. And the formula is a sentence about the overall pattern displayed by the resource, data to support that pattern, and then basically an exception or an anomaly, which you should know from maths, something that doesn't fit the pattern. Okay, right, this video will take the structure of I, we, you. So I will do one first, then we'll do one together, and then you can set one by yourself. Okay, so let's get into it. This question is from the May 2023 Geography B paper. Again, if you're doing Edexcel A or AQA or OCR, it's still describe questions are always points-based marking. So here is our first question. Now, this is the first thing to do when you get a resource. It's something that I kind of always skip, is I tend to race into looking at what am I trying to look at. I'd take your time, read what the title is. So energy provided by fossil fuels to generate electricity in the UK. Right, so you've checked the title. That is the first thing you do. So you know it's about fossil fuels, you know it's about electricity in the UK. Then you check your axis as well. This is a bit of a line, it's a compound line graph, so time is at the bottom. And then check your unit of the y-axis, and we see megawatt hours. All right, so now we're pretty good, and we just checked the key. We've got coal, crude oil, natural gas. So now we've broken down what the graph is showing us. Now we can start to look for some numbers and some patterns. So here is the question. Describe, so the command word describes. Describe means say what you see, really. Electricity generated crude oil. So we need to focus in. Now I have the question, we can focus in on crude oil, this orange shade. Okay? It says here, use data in your answer. It doesn't say how much data, but there must be some. This is the formulaic sentence starters that I talked about in the introduction. One characteristic is pattern. For example, data. However, exception. You do that in bullet point form, you're going to very quickly get those 3 marks, okay? So, let's get into it. So this is my version, or this is how I would attack this question. So I would say here, well, what's the pattern? Well, it looks, it's a rapid increase of crude oil, okay? But that rapid increase does see a trail off. So it's an initial increase before a slower decrease. Yep. So that's kind of the pattern I'll be talking about, a rapid increase by a slow decline. The example would be the peak consumption in 1999 here. You have to get your ruler out and measure this in an exam, because you tend to think, okay, that could be it, but no, actually this is the peak. And then at the bottom we say, well, okay, look at the decrease that I've talked about. So there's my data to support my pattern. Okay, but does it just always decrease? Is that true? Well, no, actually we can see there's an increase here, isn't there? So there's an exception. However, it does increase inside that. So let's see how I convert. And it really, just before we kind of get into the writing of it, that's what your graph should really look like, is it should look like you've drawn all over it, okay? Made little notes, circled little things, because you're analyzing a resource and then you're converting it into the sentences. So don't start writing before you know what you're going to say. Okay, so here we go. This links to my overall pattern, so these arrows here. One characteristic is that oil increases rapidly in the 1970s, that's that arrow here, before slowly decreasing over time, down here. For example, peak oil in 99, or peak oil is in 99, with 29 megawatt hours before reducing to just 7 megawatt hours in 2016. So that's the data that the examiner must see. 29 megawatt hours down to 7 megawatt hours, okay? And I add in the times for those numbers as well. So now I have my data. What about the exception? How do I get that 3rd mark? However, there is an increase in this time period when oil increases significantly in 1995. So I'm basically pulling up this rising limb here. Okay, see where it rises? I'm calling that my exception because I'm saying it goes up and then it decreases, but say actually no, within that there is an exception. It does increase in 1995. For me, that is enough to get that third mark, and I have my pattern, my data, and then my exception. Right, that's my example. So that's the I do. Let's do the we do. Here's the mark scheme if you want to pause and check this answer, potentially look at other things that could have been said. I could have said fluctuation. That's a really nice word to use as well. So we do. So let's do this. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to find a pattern for you. I'm going to find an example for you, and I'm going to find a anomaly for you, an exception, and then you are going to write it into a paragraph. So you will need a pen and paper for this. Okay, before we do that, let's break down what it's actually showing us. This is showing us the gross national income per capita in USD and the percentage of urban population. So we have urban population on our y-axis, and on our x-axis we have GNI, gross national income. So this is looking about correlation. Remember, correlation is about two factors and their relationship. Okay, so let's look for the pattern first. There is a correlation. It's a positive correlation, isn't there? Generally, as gross national income per capita rises, we become more urbanized. And this links to things like the Clark-Fisher model, Rostow's development model. It's rural to urban migration, isn't it? Yep, so here's maybe your emerging countries, and here are your developing countries. So there's a positive correlation. What data would I pick? So, okay, I've got my pattern. What data? Well, Botswana, most developed and most urbanized. I think that's a great place to talk about. Okay, so that's my data. Okay, I'll be talking about its GNI and its urban as my data. Well, which one doesn't fit the pattern? Which is the anomaly? Well, for me, the one that jumps out is Angola. Okay, because it's almost literally, it's only 2% less urbanized than Botswana, but its GNI is about, over 4,000 smaller. This for me is the developing urban country. Yep, where these are the emerging urban countries. So that's my exception, and that's the one I want to talk about. So pause the video. Using these sentences, write just 3 sentences. Can you do that? Okay. And then what we'll do is I will show you my version, and you can see how similar yours was and potentially how it was different. Okay. So pause the video now and have a write of this. I think that will be really useful use of your time. Okay. So pause the video now before we move on. Okay, let's get into my answer. So let's talk about that pattern. Let's talk about that positive correlation. One characteristic is there is a positive correlation. Yep, I'm saying the two variables are linked and they're positively connected. For example, Botswana is the most developed USD 6,700 GNI per capita, and the most urbanized with 70%. So I'm just using it as data as a way of getting that second mark. Now this last one is going to be our exception. So let's see what I wrote for the exception. However, there are anomalies such as Angola. Now this is a GCSE exam. You're very pushed for time. You could have said, Angola has a GNI of 2,200, blah blah blah, and an urban population of 68. You could say that, but I think you don't want to spend too much time. As long as you have that data in the middle and it's sandwiched between two correct statements, you'll get the 3 marks. Okay, you can save that for an 8-mark question or a 12-mark question and so on. Okay, so be efficient, move on. So there is the mark scheme. You can see here I didn't have a ruler and I was doing it off the computer, so I couldn't perfectly match it up, but I'm within the acceptable range. Okay, I went 6, 7, and this is 6, 6, so I'm good. Generally, you're allowed to be in 10%. Okay, other things you could say, Eswatini is an anomaly. Angola will be pulled out as an anomaly as well. Positive relationship. I've said positive correlation. I think that's more advanced. There's other things you can pull out as well. Botswana, we did pull out for urban. Okay, so for me, that's getting 3 out of 3, and you can cross-reference with the mark scheme. Now, your turn. This is the you do. What I would suggest is, if you do write this, if maybe type it, post it in the comment section of the video, and I will give you some feedback. Can I tell you what I think it would have got, and maybe how you improve it? Okay. So this is a 2000 Geography A LXLB human paper, 2021. Here is your resource. I'm not going to say too much, as you need to be doing this. Here's your question. Describe the change in Q8's life expectancy shown in figure 2A. I would say treat this as a 3-mark question. We're just practicing here, okay? An exam, of course, is a 2-mark question, but with this, try and write it as a 3-mark. See if you can stick to that formula that we did. There's your question. Have a go at writing it now, and then once I'll pause the video and have a go at writing it. And what I will do is I will post the mark scheme on in 2 seconds time once you replay the video. Okay, there's your mark scheme. How did you go? Did you pick up marks, life expectancy? Interestingly, this question was about Q8, but they're almost daring you to talk about another country, okay? So you could say, look, it's changed, but comparably so, it's not changed as much as India. I mean, for me, they've asked you about Q8. You think, well, am I still answering the question if I start talking about the USA and Spain? I think you are if you're comparing it to Q8. So, right. Let's move on to the final thoughts. Remember, bullet points-based marking, 3 sentences, 3 marks. Bullet points is the way to go, trust me. And then sticking to that formula of overall data exception, and you will get 3 out of 3. I hope that helped. I would point you towards this cheat sheet that I've created. If you scan the QR code, you can download it for free, or you can just take a print screen now. It just gives you kind of the structure of answering the different types of questions, whether they are describe questions, describe with graph, explain questions, and even assess and evaluate. If you stick to these structure and these connectives, you'll do very, very well, okay? And the last thing I would say is, when I was assembling this video, it became very obvious that in exam papers, explain is far more common than describe. In some exam papers, there's not a single describe question in it. So get your explain questions right first before worrying about describe. But describe is just points-based marking, so bullet points, bullet points, bullet points, bullet points. All right, guys, I hope that helps. Leave me any comments in the comment section, and like and subscribe for future videos as we make more and more masterclass videos, guys. And good luck in your GCSEs. I'm sure you'll do very, very well. In a bit.